because of the relationship between ads and organic on the Amazon platform, there are scenarios where you may have unprofitable advertising per se, if all we looked at was ROI, but we have very profitable total ACoS.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of What's Working in E-commerce. I'm your trusty host, Eagan Heath. I'm a partner at Asymmetric Marketing, and you can check out the work we do at asymmetric.pro. We're working with clients on WordPress, WooCommerce, SEO, PPC, paid social, email automation, and much more. Today, I have an expert in Amazon PPC. I'm excited to have Elizabeth Greene, who's a co-founder at Junglr. Elizabeth, welcome.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Right on. I wonder if you could talk to people about what's going on in Amazon PPC right now. You've been doing this quite a few years. I know you've built up a team. How has it changed and what seems to be working now in 2024 and beyond?
That's a really good question. So what has changed is that it's gotten a lot more sophisticated and a lot more competitive, which honestly I think is the nature of most pay-per-click platforms. Obviously, I'm super zeroed in on what's happening in the Amazon space, but I do keep an ear to the ground on other pay-per-click platforms because there's a lot of innovations coming out of like a different perspective. So I always love giving the outside perspective. And so a lot of Amazon sellers, if they've been like stuck, zeroed in on their narrow scope of vision, they're like, I can't believe it's getting more competitive. I can't believe cost per clicks are going up. I can't believe the complexity that's happening. It's like, it's kind of the nature of advertising, and marketers in a lot of ways screw up stuff. So
yeah, as any platform gets more mature, the competition gets more stiff. So we're certainly seeing that as well. And I think you've really nailed it. You know, is there anything you've changed about your process? It looks like I'm looking at your website on Junglr here. You guys really start with an audit, or that's often a good way to get engaged with the client or get going. You know, what kind of things do you go through in that audit? What are the big categories and how do you guys look at an account?
Yeah, you asked what has changed about our processes. A lot has changed about our processes because if nothing's changed at all, are you really growing? Are you really getting more better at what you do? I would hope so, seeing as we've been in the game for going on 6 or 7 years now. But in a lot of ways, the nuts and bolts of what needs to be taken action on, what I find is it's really good ad management is about good spend allocation, I think, at the core of it. And so the things in which we've constantly worked to get better and better at is how do we take, I don't want to say bets because it shouldn't be a complete shot in the dark, but in a lot of ways, because we're dealing with consumer behavior, and let's be honest, that's a human and humans are fickle, I myself included. And so it's how can we better quantify, make better calculations, have a better, deeper, clearer understanding of where this ad spend is going to be the best spent. And as the platform gets more competitive, and it's a lot harder to turn a profit these days, given social economic climates, everything happening, everybody's super worried. A couple of years ago, there was a lot of aggregators that came into our space. So top line revenue growth was like, as long as you can get a couple years of whiz bang growth and you can sell out, like you could hit that cash cow. A lot of that has dried up. There's a lot of aggregators that have got under. They found that managing Amazon brands is a lot more complicated than they thought. It's not just a P&L. There's a whole lot of things that go into that you have to be able to get right. And if you get them wrong, it's very easy for things to go very wrong. And because there isn't, let's be honest, businesses can exit, aggregators coming in, legitimize a lot of selling of Amazon businesses, where before that wasn't a place to put equity. It wasn't considered legitimate because you're focused on one platform. That's all that you have. It was seen as maybe not as secure as it actually can be. So the benefit of that is that I think it brought a lot of sophistication to purchasing of Amazon business. So that hasn't gone away and has been improved. But the cash injection is not what it once was, and which has caused a lot of Amazon sellers to shift to focusing on more bottom line, which, let's be honest, businesses should always at least have a pulse on their bottom line, but you'll be surprised at how many businesses do not. And to be honest, it's a little bit terrifying. And so what we've really shifted our focus to, because a lot of these sellers are coming into us like stuck between a rock and a hard place. The very interesting thing about Amazon PPC and the Amazon platform itself is there is a correlation between advertising efforts and organic growth and organic market share. There's direct correlation there. You can increase your Amazon organic market share through your advertising efforts, which means that there's this another dynamic to keep in mind. So it's not just strictly an ROI. And if you only focus on advertising ROI, you can end up hurting overall sales and market share, and you see that slump, which of course affects the bottom line as well. But then if we push too hard, we're making no money, and so that's obviously not going to be sustainable for a business long term. So brands get stuck in this. I don't know how I can push more, how I can grow. I don't see a path to growth where I don't lose profits, but at the same time, every single time, all I focus on is I don't take into account that other piece of the pie. Like, they understand the dynamic, they understand the push and pull, they just don't know how to navigate that. And oftentimes they come in with some preconceived idea of how that needs to be achieved. So they'll come in and say, hey, I need to get XYZ, or I need this BSR. If I just had this, then my life would be better. And what we find is that oftentimes those preconceived ideas, it's not that it's not a path to get there, but what a lot of sellers don't understand is that's not the only path to be able to get there. There's more than one way you can slice and dice it. And
that's a good reminder for clients out there and brands of, if you're engaging an agency, don't just go to them for tactics, like tap into their strategic expertise as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are we even asking the right questions? Are we optimizing for the right things? There's a couple things in there, Elizabeth, I want to dig into. So you mentioned kind of ad spend allocation. Is that maybe you could talk about what's that across? Is that across placements within Amazon? Is that across SKUs and products and product categories? How do you think about that, and how do you guys approach that ad spend allocation?
That's a really good question. And the answer to it at the end of the day is all the above, but that doesn't give a listener a really good way to dig into that. So great. Now you just told me I have to look at everything and think about everything. And how does that get me to, like, where should my ad spend be going? How do I allocate it properly? And so the way that we have done it is looking at it, taking a broader perspective, and then allowing that data analytics to lead us down the rabbit hole in a way to the correct actions. Because there's a couple ways you can do it. And the first way is what most sellers do if they're self-managed, or maybe even an advertiser does because they don't know a better way to do it, is they'll go into the ad account and say, okay, spend is too high. Let me fix and tweak all the things that I know where spend could be optimized. Let me add negative keywords, adjust bids, do all the actions. So those aren't the wrong actions. It's not that the actions taking place are incorrect. It's where they're taking place that can be incorrect. And so what we try and find is the where. And how we've been doing that is looking at it from an entire account perspective and then breaking it down by product we found to be the most actionable. And so the way that we'll do this is we'll take, familiar with Amazon and all, there's business reports, which will break down sales and everything of all your entire account. And then we will use processes, how to do spreadsheets, data analytics, which your audience, if they're advertisers, probably live in spreadsheets, is to take ad reports. And then basically what we're trying to do is marry in their total account data, which should be business reports, sales, traffic, conversion rates, all those things. Bring in the advertising, which would be ad sales, ad spend, ad clicks, ad orders, impressions. And then what we'll do, again, if you're familiar with Amazon listings at all, there are some listings where they'll have multiple offers on the listing. So it's considered like a parent ASIN and child ASIN. And in a lot of ways, to simplify things, and again, a lot of my views on things and a lot of how we've come about with these sort of analysis processes is the fact that we manage for several large clothing brands. If you want to talk about complexity of SKUs, complexity of listings, there are some listings that will have hundreds of SKUs underneath them with those types of accounts, right? So it's like you're looking at this big, massive ball of spend and sales and things fluctuating all the time and inventory changes, and you're like, how do I make sense of this?
And potentially lots of variants, different sizes, different colors. Is that right?
Sizes, colors, all of the above. It's crazy. And so because when you're looking at it that way, in a lot of ways, if you're going down to a base level of SKU or child ASIN, there's this dynamic between listings and all of the SKUs on those listings where and some relationships between the data that actually can lead you to incorrect conclusions if you're looking at it on a too micro level. And if we wanted to get into the weeds of what those inconsistencies are, I can talk about that. But so what we do is we view a listing. So listing to me is you land on a page and you can see all the SKUs, and we view that kind of like a landing page, right? So this is where we are directing the traffic, and this is the ad spend that is going towards all of that traffic directed there. Would be a simple way to put it. And so to view it that way, what we'll do is we'll calculate everything on a base level, and then you can use a pivot table or something and simply roll it up to aggregate everything that is going to that one landing page, listing, whatever you want to call that, parent ASIN if you're in the Amazon world. And what that allows us to do is see a whole view of the entire catalog with organic and ads in between. And then this is where you do the analysis. And this is something that I had a, oh my gosh, duh moment when I came across this. And I wish, I think I was watching something and had the light bulb moment or something, because oftentimes we know what our best sellers are. It's pretty obvious. Okay, it's these two products. But my question on that is always, by how much? How large of a piece of the pie is this thing taking up? What is the impact of this thing on my account? And so the easiest way to figure that out is actually by looking at percentages of total. It's really easy. What is the sales divided by sum total of all sales, right? That's something you drag down a column. You can get it within minutes, and all of a sudden you go, oh, these three products have 40% of my total sales, and then everything else in the catalog makes a fraction of a percentage. That gives you a very easy focus. You know where your sales are coming from.
Are you always going by sales revenue, or is it revenue sales data per product, or are we now getting into what's the profitability on each one? Is that something you optimize for clients?
Yes, absolutely. So you can add profitability data. That one's a little bit more, we have tools where we can pull that. So that's really easy for us just to pull from the entire account, roll it up, do that analysis with the profitability data included. If you don't have access to a tool that does that, you can look at, there is a number that's pretty common in the Amazon advertising community called total ACoS, which is essentially taking your ad spend and dividing it by the total sales. Again, you could do this on an overall account, or you can do this on a, again, per listing level. And then that just tells you like, hey, what percentage of my total sales am I spending to achieve what I'm doing? And so that gives you napkin math profitability if you factor in ads.
Yeah. And something that's so interesting is over the years, clients always ask, if I spend more on Google ads, does my SEO get better? Google's answer is no. I actually tend to agree with that in the sense of Google wants people to keep getting the best organic results. And if they make those pay to play, that could put that whole cash cow in jeopardy. So Google's a little different. On Amazon, as my business partner marketing, as you're saying, it's if you're getting more volume, your organic can benefit. And so you almost need different metrics. And I think one of the ones you mentioned in there, I don't know if that's the total ACoS or another one, is just, we're not just looking at ones that are attributed to the PPC, Amazon PPC. We need to take into account everything we're selling, and some of those organic sales were influenced by the PPC sales, correct?
Yep, that is absolutely correct. And yeah, so that's my understanding of Google Ads as well. And the thing is, with the way that Amazon chooses to showcase products, like for Google, like you said, it's not within their best interest to have somebody just spam ads and be able to get to the top, because that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to have the best results for their algorithm. So that's absolutely not within their best interest. The way that Amazon platform works in general is it goes off of, we want to showcase the products that we know shoppers want to purchase, right? When you search something for something on Amazon, I want to buy a metal water bottle, right? I want to bring the best to the top. So for them, having some insight into where is their good shopper interactions being ideally purchases at the end of the day, click-through rates, conversion rates, they take all of these things into account. And so you can force that visibility with advertising. But of course, as we all know, with advertising, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink. So you're at least paying for the click and you're paying for that traffic to come in. But if that traffic converts, Amazon in a lot of ways is saying this converted regardless if this was paid traffic or not. We still have a data point to say shoppers, when searching XYZ thing, when they have this path to purchase, they purchase this one. And so it is within their best interest to factor that into the organic algorithm. And so they've chosen to do so. And because it's not like they're shooting themselves in the foot, you still have to make the purchase, right? They're not saying, oh, as long as you spend on ads, doesn't matter if you're not converting at all, doesn't matter if people are clicking and not purchasing, that doesn't help you. It's the sales that are coming from the advertising that does help you. So in a lot of ways, you still have to run effective ads to make it work.
And I think you were saying, okay, we do this pivot table, we do this spreadsheet analysis. What percent of the sales are coming from, say, your top product or these other products? Let's say you've got that data. Maybe you've gone a layer deeper. If you happen to know the profitability per product or gross profit per product, that's excellent too. Then what do you do? How do you say, we need to move some of this spend over here? What are you guys thinking when you say, okay, we're going to shift some of the budget to a different product or product category?
Absolutely. So that comes into the next analysis of percentages of total, and that's percentages of total spend. And just looking at these two numbers, there's other numbers we can talk about that I would also analyze, but just looking at what percentage is this product driving from a total sales, and what percentage of my total ad budget am I spending on it? That right there will give you, I can tell you how many accounts I've looked at where it's like, this product that you're spending 25% of the total budget on is only driving like 5% of your sales. Like, why is there a difference here?
Okay.
And I will say you will naturally have that difference if the product is, say, in a launch phase, right? You're intentionally pushing aggressive advertising to that because you expect, again, those sort of residual growth in total sales. That takes time because it takes time to grow the organic share. So there will be times where I'll see that, and then the seller will add context for that is, here's what we're trying to do, or we are intentionally trying to push this product. Okay, that makes sense. But a lot of times what happens is that the products have just been put up and no one's paid attention to where the budget is going. So you'll show them that, oh my, and here's another one where you go, wait, here's these other products that are making up 35%, 40% of your total sales. And you guys are only spending like 9% of your ad budget here. Do you think if we shifted ad budgets a little bit to the products that we already know convert well, have great click-through rates, there's potential to grow more market share here? So you can quickly see like where budgets are going. And then obviously you have to go in and do more deeper analysis on the ad strategy and what's being run. And it's a lot harder than it sounds like. Yeah, just shift the budget. Like the metrics of that are way harder. But it at least gives you insights into where to look in the account.
Yeah, it's interesting. We just did an Amazon audit, actually. So my business partner, Mark, understands the Amazon world better. We did it for a brand that had been on Shark Tank, which was pretty exciting for us.
Oh, nice.
And actually got introduced to the podcast, which was awesome. And exactly what you said, we had that in a spreadsheet analysis. And it was basically like, here's the percent of sales for this product. Here's the percent of ad spend. What's going on here? And now you're educating on why this is important. It's just, it seems like this is a big converter over here, or like we're basically putting too much budget toward this product where somewhere else we could probably get some more sales and potentially more profit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll give you another couple analysis you can do. One other one is looking at, so where is the budget going? And then you can take that a layer deeper and say, what is the performance of that budget? Performance in Amazon terms being something called ACoS, which is like the inverse of ROAS. So it's on Amazon, it's ad spend divided by ad sales. So basically, I was looking at that. You can look at, again, the total ACoS, which is ad spend for that product divided by the total sales. What percentage of my total sales am I spending on my advertising? And then another one that we like to look at, we call it, has different names, like organic ratios or whatever, but you can take your ad sales and divide that by total sales. And it basically says what percentage of the total sales for this product come from advertising. And if you have a high percentage of total sales, you are highly dependent on your advertising to drive those sales. So you probably don't have really good organic placements. So that's something to look into. If you have really high ACoS, your ads are unprofitable. If you have really high total ACoS, your ad spend for what that product's driving is unprofitable. So you probably have unprofitability of the product, which is really important because there is a scenario, again, because of the relationship between ads and organic on the Amazon platform, there are scenarios where you may have unprofitable advertising per se, if all we looked at was ROI, but we have very profitable total ACoS. And the difference, why that can happen, is the ad sale percentage. So if you have a small piece of your sales coming from your ads, that is unprofitable, but that's driving greater and greater organic sales, so you have a low ad sale percentage, then that can happen. If you have very unprofitable ads, but all of a sudden that ad sale percentage, more and more of your total sales being driven from ads, that's where you get into unprofitable territory. And so these are for us like barometers to be managed. It's okay, this when it's saying, oh, you just need to make changes. Like a lot of times those shifts, that's where the technical struggle comes in about what are the actual actions to be able to do those things, but at least tells you where to look. Because the problem with large, complicated accounts is you look at it and you're like, I know this number needs to be here, but I don't know what I need to do to affect that. Versus looking at the entire catalog and going, okay, instead of me just like randomly trying to change and optimize a bunch of things inside the account, I could say, here's 2 products where I'm overspending, that is inefficiencies. So instead of me QAing the entire account, it's where are these products being advertised, where are the inefficiencies within those 2 products, and then that will fix the account.
Yeah, that's great. I wonder, when people come to you for an audit or to be a potential client, is there criteria you go through to see, is there even a path here? Is there enough search demand? If we do keyword research, is there search demand there for what they actually do? Do they have the right margins? Is it good? Is it a high enough average order value where advertising even makes sense? I wonder if you could talk through any of those red flags where you say, you know what, we looked at the account, there's not enough opportunity here. It doesn't make sense for us to work together.
Yeah, honestly, for me, in a lot of ways, it's having that first deep discussion with the brand owner, brand manager, founder to say, what are you actually trying to achieve here? Because there will be some accounts that we'll take on. I'll be honest, like we have several like supplement brands, right? Those are very competitive, very cutthroat because of the repeat purchase aspect there. So a lot of your competition has recognized I'm willing to lose out on the first order because I know I'm going to get order 4, 5, and 6. And so a lot of newcomers to those spaces will look at those cost per clicks and be like, how can somebody afford $10 cost per click? This doesn't make sense.
I just want to interject there. Yeah. There's a classic of direct response advertising. Dan Kennedy would say, whoever can spend the most money to acquire a customer wins. And so it's right in there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But so with those, you're asking about where's a red flag and where there might be potential issues. So if someone came to me with a brand like that and was like, I need to get, again, I'm going to speak in ACoS terms, so that's what makes sense in my brain. ROAS, ACoS, you can factor them either way. But someone says, oh, I need to achieve a 25% ACoS in this space. I don't know if that's possible. And the reason why it's not possible is because the factors of that are, what is the cost per click? Which I can put in whatever bid I want to achieve whatever cost per click. Are you going to get the traffic? Probably not.
In Google Ads, we say you're not going to get any impression share if your bid's not high enough.
Same story thing, in Amazon. Impressions. You're not going to get views and impressions for that. And then the other factor of that is the conversion rates of the products, right? Lower conversion rates, more clicks to make a sale. We're spending more for that sale, right? Product price. So it's how much do we have to pay per click? How many clicks does it take on average? What is the sale price? And there is wiggle room in that, right? You can do better targeting to affect better conversion rates. You can find searches that are cheaper to affect lower click-through rates. There's only so much space you can play in before you'll completely run a product into the ground because you're so focused on the ROI, right? And so a brand who comes to me and says, we have to achieve this, and if you can't tell me I can achieve this, then like you're a bad advertiser or something. There's no opportunity. I can't play in that sandbox. I'm sorry. I'll give you the best advice I possibly can. I try and set realistic expectations. I'm not going to BS anybody because I don't want to BS you. And then my team has to bear the brunt of trying to achieve something that's unachievable. My team loves me because I don't bring them clients that have I hope I don't. I'm trying not to bring them clients that have... Yeah,
that have unrealistic expectations. That's a great way to say it. And it sounds like looking at those fundamental metrics of if you've got unrealistic expectations on what you're going to pay on CPC, what your conversion rate is, what your ACoS ends up being, there's not anybody who can help you, right? So they need to have those fundamentals in place.
And to those brands, like oftentimes, I mean, they're not in the weeds, which is fine. They're trying to run their brand, right? Like they don't need to know. There's plenty of options out there. There's software, there's freelancers, there's agencies like us where at the end of the day, if you want to grow, you can't be the final expert on everything. So a lot of them come in and say, I want to achieve this. This is what I feel like would be reasonable. And then it's, okay, let's do that math. What does that math look like? What metrics would you have to get to make that achievable? What's the delta between where you are and what that is? And do we think that's a realistic expectation, yes or no? And a lot of them don't realize, okay, let's plug in this number. And this is what our forecasting tells we have to be at a cost per click. I don't think you can get traffic in this market at this. And then it becomes, okay. But so my preference in those conversations is to bring it back to, why do you want to achieve 25% ACoS? What do you feel like that's going to do to you or do for you? And some of the brands, a lot of times it depends. If they're newer, they might say, oh, well, somebody told me on average that it was 25%.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
They just heard it somewhere. Yeah.
I just heard it somewhere. And then some of the brands will say, if I don't achieve this, I'm going to be unprofitable. That's a different conversation. Yeah. Okay. Is there a path where at a higher ACoS you can be profitable? Can we figure out what that path looks like? So when there's something like,
you may need to raise the price in that case.
Yeah, maybe you need to raise the price, do something to improve conversion rates. Is there a different space in the market? How viable is the product? There's a lot of ways that you can attack the problem. But I think it's just looking at, what does your market look like? What is reasonable expectations in the market? What do you need to achieve as a business? And then it's an amalgamation of all those things that will get you to the right strategy.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think you've got a calculator. Is that correct? Can you show that to us?
Yeah, we can look at that. This is the kind of thing that I do on weekends.
So fun.
So fun.
All right. Talk us through these metrics. And some people might be listening, so you may need to describe what we're looking at too.
Yeah, so this is basically a way to calculate what I just talked about. Because I myself puzzled and still puzzle over metrics like this, because a brand comes through and says, what do you think is achievable? And as a marketer, to be honest, that's a really intense problem to try and tackle, especially in markets where they're like, what do you feel, if I had achieved this, what do you feel like the outcomes will be? Maybe if all I was looking at was advertising, it would be way, way simpler. But the thing is that I have to take into account the broader organic share. And to be honest, I can't quantify. And to be honest, nobody can. So this is not, at least I don't feel it's a feeling within myself to not be able to say this, is I don't know quantifiably how much sales growth you have when you move from position 5 to position 2. Because that is, there's not really any,
there's probably averages of what's the click-through rate like at each position, but that could change by vertical, right?
It changes by vertical, it changes by shopper search, it changes by volume, and
I think
the minute you calculate it.
There's always an average in the middle. So in SEO terms, so that was my first channel. You could come up with an estimate of, if we went from this low click-through rate in spot number 10, if we can jump up to spot number 2, we can expect 5 to 10% of the clicks or what have you. You can project that out. It doesn't mean it's gospel, but it's something to go on. So even to have a range, I think, can be a useful conversation.
Maybe I should talk with you and see how you guys calculate. Because the thing that's different with Amazon and that I struggle to figure out is, with Google, it probably makes sense for you to have an estimate of what that click share is, because their model in the advertising, it's helpful for you to know that because you're incentivized to spend more. When you're talking about organic share on Amazon, in theory, if you had a defined understanding of what that additional traffic would look like, you could actually reverse engineer the total sum traffic on the platform. And so they've released some data points that have given us some insight, and then they've intentionally calculated the data in a way to fully mask the full traffic.
Sure. But even in Helium 10 and other tools, they're giving you some estimate, like here's the search per month and here's the even revenue per month per vendor.
They give you search volume for the entire thing, and there are some that can calculate revenue.
Okay, sure.
It's still a bit of a black box, to be honest.
Yeah.
I wish it wasn't.
Some of it may be estimates. It makes sense. All right, so here I see we've got average cost per click, we've got average conversion rate, got that average order value. And then you've got, I think, dynamically the ACoS and the ROAS figured out too, right?
Yeah, so absolutely. So this is the thing that I find helpful with a lot of the vendors, to just punch the numbers and see what happens. Because I was looking for a way to quantify. Really, I started off with this as a way to quantify how conversion rate fits into your ACoS or ROAS projections. Because that's a factor that a lot of sellers don't see, is they're like, hey, why did something go down? It's always advertising, right? Advertising broke. You increase your price $5 and less people are purchasing. There's a factor.
It changed the
there,
conversion rate. It changed the average
Right.
order value, and it changed the conversion rate.
Yeah, so there's so many dynamics to this. And then also just a projection. If we're going into a market and we're trying to say benchmark, there's a lot of things like what is achievable, what is reasonable here. And so what you can do is look at, say, the average cost per click. So ideally you could get, say, a 50-cent click, average conversion rate of 10%. And if I had an average order value of $20, that gives me a ROAS of 4 or an ACoS of 25%. That's pretty healthy, right? So that's pretty reasonable. Unfortunately, what happens is a lot of sellers will come into a new market and cost per clicks are up because you can't optimize and you're just pushing for traffic at that point. Conversion rates are down because you don't have many reviews, listing isn't fully optimized, and maybe you had to start at a lower price point because you're just trying to get those conversions initially to achieve that ranking or achieve those. And all of a sudden we went from something that was totally stomachable to an ACoS of 69% and a 1.4.
Yeah.
Not profitable, not great. And so then the question becomes, what does it take to get where I want to go? So that was the other question. Because you can punch in these things and do a forecast, which is always nice, but it's always nice to be like, okay, where am I trying to get to and what does that look like? So to do that, we built out like a forecasting model of saying a target ACoS. So we had, again, I think in ACoS terms, you could inverse of ROAS. So if a target ACoS is, say, 30%, what does that, and there's just forecast models off of here, benchmarking against this. What would cost per click need to be, or what would conversion rate need to be? Again, it's either or here.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah. So one of these needs to change. Conversion rate needs to go from 6% to over 13%, or cost per click needs to go from 75 cents down to 32 cents. And it could be, which could be a combination of both, but it gives you a sense of it.
And so it just gives you a sense of going, okay, to achieve this, because honestly, the biggest thing that can be controlled with advertising is the cost per click. We can marginally influence the conversion rate by picking better targeting, being more intentional with the targeting, placements. There's ways that we can tweak it, but there's less control over the conversion rates just due to the fact that, again, listings asked as landing pages. And so a lot of the determination on the conversion rate is the landing page. There's lots of optimizations, but that gives us something to bring back to the seller to say, is there something you can work on potentially on the listing to help achieve a higher conversion rate, which of course will be helpful. It's typically a combination of these two, but it just gives you a definition of how far off that is. You maybe say 30% isn't too far off, but what if we were okay with wiggling on 50? Okay, we're going from a 75-cent cost per click down to a 54, which is still a drop of about 20 cents. But that's a little bit more achievable than trying to drop it down to a 32.
There's more of a path there.
Again,
yeah. I like it.
Yeah.
Very cool. Thanks for showing this. I appreciate it. This is great. Good way to
absolutely.
Good way to talk through that with clients. You can go ahead and stop sharing if you're good on that one. Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it. I want to ask, speaking of the placements, you mentioned that briefly in there. Are there placements you don't like that you stay away from? You don't want clients running those? Are there ones that you think are excellent? There's only so many. You can talk more eloquently than I can on the specifics on those, but there's some that are a little more demand capture, and there's others that are a little more demand generation, more display style. I wonder if you can talk through the placements and how you guys think about those in a client account.
Yeah. So in the perspective of placements, there's probably a couple ways to think about it. One would be the placements based on the ad type. Like we're depending on what app type is, they'll appear in different ways and with more or less creatives attached to them. Another way that somebody who's familiar with Amazon advertising might be thinking of placements is it's called placement percentages inside of specifically the sponsored product ads, which allow you to say, I want to spend more. I'm allowing you to say increase my bids if I'm top of search in the rest of search or on product pages. So for the last one, if we're thinking about optimizing those, what we found actually works best is if you rely primarily on the bid to drive your competitiveness in the ad auction, and then simply marginally adjust placements based on what the data is telling you works best for that specific campaign. Other nuances within this is that placements are set at the campaign level and will filter down to any and all targets and products that are being advertised in that campaign. So if you have a huge amalgamation and what I lovingly refer to as like franking campaigns that are like somebody just set it up and threw a whole ton of stuff in there, it's going to go towards everything. So I'm not a huge fan of doing that because it's which one is getting the placement. It's very muddy and you don't really have visibility as to what you're actually increasing. So I don't like those.
That's how I feel about Google Performance Max. It's just a smorgasbord of everything. Did you say then there's ad types then you try to stay away from or you try to spend less on?
So for context, we typically work with a lot of founder-led brands who are a bit more profit and ROI conscious. A lot of my sellers, I'm not saying this is wrong, like right or wrong. I'm just saying that this is a fast held belief. And to be honest, and some piece of me doesn't disagree with them, is that this whole brand awareness equals wasted ad spend. So for that, because we're being a little bit more profit, it's not that they're not trying to grow market share, is that they're not willing to grow it as just someday possibly someone will recognize your brand. They're a little bit more native. They're a little bit more scrappy. They're a little bit more, again, bottom line conscious.
Yeah, direct response as opposed to brand advertising.
You will get the enterprise brands. They're like, yeah, let's absolutely dominate this search with a banner ad, and I don't care what it costs because we're stealing it from the competition. Great, we'll run those. I'm just saying for my typical brands who we find we work best with, or just that's our happy place to work, a little bit more scrappy, get a little bit more direct response focused. And so for that, we have done some tests. I've done a ton of analysis. Amazon will not tell you this, but what we have noticed as of right now, there is less impact on organic market share, i.e. organic rank placement and search for sponsored brand and sponsored display ads, which means that our primary focus continues to be on sponsored product ads. They're more native looking. They appear in the search grid. There is basically no creatives involved in this ad type. So it's not like you can run headlines. You can't run. So there's like video ads or other advertising where you can display a creative aspect, which can be very helpful. There's great click-through rates and conversion rates, if you run those right, are phenomenal on that ad type. So it's not that there's not value in it. It's not that you can't get a great ROI there. It's not that they're not valuable in bringing in sales. It's just that there's not as much of an impact. So if you're really trying to leverage ads to grow market share, that's not going to give you the biggest bang for your buck, is what we've found.
Yeah, I appreciate you talking about that. Elizabeth, thank you for sharing your Amazon PPC knowledge here. I love talking about this stuff. We may have to have you back on here. Yeah, you guys are at Junglr there's basically no E, junglr.com. Is that right?
Old school. Just drop a vowel and you sound cool.
All right, definitely. Where else can people find you, Elizabeth?
Best place to follow me is going to be LinkedIn is my biggest platform, although we're putting a lot of content into YouTube these days. So LinkedIn and YouTube, if you want to know where it's at. If you're interested in working with us, the website's definitely going to be the best place.
Right on. Elizabeth Greene from Junglr. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing what's working in e-commerce.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.